Business Brain, episode 636 for Wednesday, April 2nd, National Peanut Butter and Jelly Day, 2025. Greetings, folks, and welcome to Business Brain, the show where we take some ideas, some thoughts, some things, some stuff we've encountered. We analyze it, we use it to help tune our business brains so that we can each keep on living those charmed lives here in Durham, New Hampshire on PB&J Day. I love a good PB&J. I'm Dave Hamilton.
Here in Northern California, I'm Shannon Jean, and I want to tell you I've had a PB&J in the last 12, let's just say 24 hours.
Yeah, I've had one in the last 3 hours. So
there
yes.
you go. I love it too. On toasted. I had mine. I guarantee mine was probably different. I had mine on a toasted brioche.
Oh, wow.
Fancy. It was very nice.
Fancy. Yeah, that's a highfalutin PB&J.
Very bougie.
There's nothing wrong with a bougie PB&J.
It was glorious.
I like the like bougie peanut butter and a nice strawberry preserves.
Me too.
Me
too.
It's good.
And I love to have it with a side of barbecue potato chips because you get that savory and the sweet. Woo! Yeah, man, it's crazy.
I can see that. That's good. That's good.
But that's it. That's it. So what are we talking about today, Dave?
Yeah, I was at South by Southwest recently.
Yeah.
And, you know, I South by is an interesting conference for me. I go there for a lot of reasons, meetings with people, and more of those are happening now that more industries that I'm involved in are kind of using South by Southwest as a home base. But there are three conferences
it's a
happening.
Convergence of different stuff, kind of like Comdex and the CES show, how they eventually became one show.
Yeah, well, but South by just keeps adding their own. They're not bringing other things in.
Okay,
right?
Got it.
But like now there's starting to be a podcasting segment as part of the tech conference, and so that means that like people that would not have gone in the past now go, and so I get to meet with some of those folks, which is great. So there are three conferences that happen kind of as part of South by Southwest. Four, really, if you count the education one, but evidently I didn't. So there's the tech conference, there's the music conference, and there's a film conference. And there's things that, happen at all of those, in each of those conferences. And I look at them ahead of time and I build a schedule, and it's like, okay, yep, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to see this, I want to attend this talk, I want to see this band, I want to see this film. What's interesting is that, I go with three of my podcasts in mind, right? This one, of course, Mac Geek Gab, which is the show that I do for tech, and then Gig Gab, which I do for musicians. What's interesting is when I build my schedule, I'll have it in my head like, oh, this will be something I'll cover on Gig Gab, or this will be something I'll cover on Business Brain, or whatever.
Yeah.
More often than I would predict, I wind up changing my decision as to where the coverage is going to go as I learn more about the thing. And that was certainly the case when I went to see Strange Journey, which is a documentary that's been produced. And I don't know if it has distribution yet, but of course they're working on it. That's what the film festival is about. One of the purposes. Strange Journey, the story of Rocky Horror. Now, as a drummer, I have played drums in the Rocky Horror musical probably 100 times, right?
Nice.
And so I thought, okay, well, and I've talked about that on Gig Gab over the years. So I thought, of course, this will be a Gig Gab thing. And I went to see the movie. The first thing that was really interesting to me was in line for the movie. Obviously, there were other Rocky Horror fans, interested people around me. And when I said to them, I admitted to them, which still remains true, that I have never seen the movie Rocky Horror. I've never seen from the audience. I'd never even seen clips until the documentary. From the audience perspective, I've never seen the musical either. I've only seen it from like upstage center where my drum set is. Yeah. Now I understand the story. It took a little while to be able to memorize the show enough to be able to pay attention to what else was going on stage. But you do it 100 times. kind of happens whether you want it to or not. Yeah. And as I was saying this to people, they're like, "Wow, that's really that's an interesting thing." I'm like, "Yep." And they said, "I didn't even know there was a musical," was what most of these people said. Everybody around me, no one around me in line knew that there was a musical of this.
You mentioned this to me last week, and I said, I just thought it was just a movie.
Right. Yeah. Well, it turns out the musical came first. And it was, as I watched the movie, I decided this was definitely a business brain thing. But yes, for those of you out there, the musical came first. It was created primarily by a guy named Richard O'Brien. His son Linus O'Brien directed and produced the documentary. Which was great because obviously he had access to, you know. So like we always talk about what's your unfair competitive advantage in whatever business you're in. Linus's is that his dad created the thing that he was doing a movie about, so he had access to the right people to make a documentary, and he did it is a fantastic movie. If you get a chance to see it, even if you're not a Rocky Horror fan, you're going to want to watch it. So they explain how this started as a musical. It did very well in London. It was like immediately sold out as soon as they kind of started. Obviously, they created it first, but once it hit, it kind of became this, you know, there was a buzz about it, and it was hard to get tickets and all those things. They eventually brought it to L.A., and I'm skipping over a lot because you're going to see that when you watch the movie, folks. But they eventually brought it to L.A. and showed it at the Roxy Theater, which is a stage, but has kind of a theatrical. It feels like a theater and a place where you could go see a rock show, right? You know, Frank Zappa's famous album at the Roxy was at that same theater. But so they did it there, and Lou Adler saw it there and said, "Okay, I can make a movie of this." Okay. And so he brought people around to, you know, kind of buy into the vision and buy into the project and all that stuff. And one of the pieces that was really interesting was Richard O'Brien, who plays Riff Raff, if you've ever seen the movie or the play or the musical rather. Richard O'Brien not only wrote the songs and conceived of the whole thing and wrote it, he starred in it as Riff Raff, including the movie, which is an interesting thing. He had people approaching him, especially after it was in L.A. Or while it was in L.A. People like, you know, Mick Jagger, and other, like folks with money were like, "Oh, hey, I want to make a movie of this. I just want to buy the rights from you." And Lou Adler told him, "Don't do that." And he said, "Why not?" He says, "Because then you don't get to own it." Yeah. And so they produced it themselves. Well, Lou was part of the production, but they were able to keep their rights while partnering with people who were going to produce it, not just selling to people who were going to produce it. But they had some risk in the game, right? You know, if you want to potentially have the upside, you got to have the risk in it. And so they did. They produced this movie on a shoestring budget. It was less than $1 million to produce this movie. And they were able to keep many of the same cast that had been in the musical, which was atypical. It's still atypical to do that. Obviously, they brought Meatloaf in. They brought Susan Sarandon in. There were a couple other people were brought in to play roles. But by and large, you know, you see Richard O'Brien. He's in the movie. You see, my gosh, why can't I think of it? Tim Curry. Tim Curry? Yeah. Yep. He was from London. Yeah, in the stage show. Yeah, exactly. So, they did that. They produced the movie. Okay. Now they release the movie. It flops for the most part. They put it in. I didn't mark down the town. I probably did actually, but they previewed the movie in Santa Barbara, California, and Santa Barbara. They pointed out is an interesting town because it's full of half college kids and half senior citizens. Yeah. Okay. So they watched as people were coming out of the film early, you know, and mostly the people that were coming out of the film when the film finally ended were the college students. That's who was left. So they're like, okay. So but the smart thing was they were just paying attention. They were failing and learning, right?
And capturing the data.
Even if it was just anecdotal data, right? So, but this is the value of anecdotal data, and the plural of anecdote is not data. So anecdotal information is maybe the right way to say this.
Yeah.
So they noticed, okay, college students, all right, okay, so maybe there's maybe that's our market. Younger people might get this and be into it. And at this point, none of the callbacks or any of those things that we as a culture know about Rocky Horror, there was none of the callbacks to the screen.
People
none of the
singing, throwing
the rice and all that crap.
Okay.
Yeah, by the way, if you're going to go see the musical, don't bring stuff to throw. It turns out those of us on stage, we're real. So we don't want stuff thrown at us. But none of that existed at this point, right? It was just the show. And it was built to be this campy thing. It was built to be tongue-in-cheek might be not be the right word, but they knew what they were creating, sort of.
Sure.
And so they said, okay, great. College students. All right. They're trying, and theaters are like, well, I don't know. Finally, they said, all right, well, what if we show it at midnight?
Yeah.
That this way, we're not taking money out of your pocket. You can run three shows.
Yeah.
We're just adding a thing, and all you got to do is pay a projectionist, and you probably sell enough tickets to offset that cost. And so they did this in 2 theaters to start: the Waverly in New York City, and ironically, the Paramount in Austin, which it turns out is the theater that I was sitting in watching the world premiere of this, which was cool. Right. And so they would, these 2 theaters agreed to run it Friday, Saturday night. And so they kind of, the partners in the thing said, okay, well, you call on Monday mornings, you call New York, I'll call Austin, and we'll just find out, see how it goes, see how it's been. So they're like 3 weeks in, Lou Adler calls Austin on the 3rd Monday or whatever and says, how'd it go? And the theater manager says, now it's worth noting, because I was in the theater experiencing this, the Paramount holds about 1,200 people. It is a large movie theater. It's where they host all the world premieres at South by Southwest. It's a gorgeous theater. The seats are horribly uncomfortable, but it's a gorgeous theater. And so they call the manager, how was it? Yeah, about 50 people for each performance. And Lou's like, okay. I don't know. And the guy says, yeah, but here's something interesting. It's the same 50 people.
Coming back.
Yeah. And Lou said, okay, that is important information. And they were finding the same thing in New York. And they're like, all right, what we need to do is just put this out there and let the right people find it. And of course, putting it in the right markets, that would have the right kind of people. And sure enough, it today now, of course, is the longest running movie ever. And I can't imagine what it will take for something to beat that, because it still runs every weekend somewhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
Somewhere
and not just somewhere, many somewheres, right?
Yeah. It's pretty cool.
And so they didn't find their audience. The audience found them. But it's just like the idea of paying attention to what your pivot is going to be with your business, right? And, this was 2 theaters. This is April of 1976. It was in 2 theaters. By 1978, it was in 50 theaters, right? Wow. Now it's in hundreds of theaters, right? Yeah. The shout outs, all of that audience participation stuff, that didn't start until September of 1976. The whole idea of wearing costumes didn't start until Halloween performance. And then, of course, it was like, well, we could do this for every performance. And it developed a community. And, they said something interesting. I mean, there's a cult around this, right? I mean, there's a whole community. They say how much
revenue it's generated in...
They did not. No, but Richard O'Brien did say, it turns out that creating something like this is a heck of an annuity.
I could imagine, man.
Right?
Yeah.
Now it's in, 200 to 300 theaters every weekend. There's more in October. They'll, create theaters for it to play in October's. Yeah. But, they said something which really, is you don't make cults. Audiences make cults.
Yeah, that's true.
And once I've been involved in things that started like this. I was involved in a production called Bitter Pill years ago, and we put it together. It was this weird thing where there was music and live performance, and it's very hard to describe, but it was basically live acted music videos. That's not nearly enough of a description of it, but that's as close as we need to get here. And it was the same thing. We booked a 3-week run. We put this thing out. After the first night, the rest of the run was sold out. Half of those tickets were sold to the same people.
Yeah, that's
They
wild.
wanted to see it. And then the rest were people clamoring to get in the door to this place. And it was like, okay, wait a minute. We've got something here.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there were too many different creative minds at work, and there was a huge clash, and it never really went anywhere after that. But
I looked it up. So it's totals about $500 million in revenue, $140 million in lifetime box office, $200 million. These are estimates. Home media, DVD, VHS, all that stuff.
Sure.
$50 million merchandise sales, licensing and live performances, $75 million. Soundtrack sales, $35 million. $500 million. That's a lot.
That's a lot of money.
The lesson here is, obviously the pivot, everything else, but you want to own your content. You can share it on social media if you want.
Yeah,
you can share it, but you must own it, and because you will get that residuals in one way or another. It may not be monetary like this, but it will be. You can get your customers and your credibility and all that kind of stuff. So you must own. You create your content offline, and then you can share it. But you retain ownership of it.
Own it. Yep.
That's awesome. It's a great
if you want an example of the opposite of that, look at somebody like who was also at South by Southwest, John Fogerty, right? Yep. He just recently, in the last few years, got the rights to all of his songs back. But he spent most of his life and career not owning the rights at all to any of those Creedence songs.
Brutal.
And it was because they signed a bad contract. It happens all the time.
It's a cautionary tale. Over and over and over and over. Young artist trying to get ahead just does their, signs anything.
Very tempting. Like even in this, Richard O'Brien was like, wait, why don't I want to sell the rights? This is why I did this. And Lou Adler's like, because then you can't do it yourself. That hugely valuable. So,
awesome.
Yeah.
Good story.
Yeah. So, hopefully the movie will get distribution and you'll be able to see it. And we'll let you know. We'll keep an eye on it. But very,
cool.
very well done. And I skipped over many things. I obviously focused on the business aspect of it here, but yeah. It was really good stuff. So,
I want to share.
We don't really have a whole. We're at like the 20-minute mark.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I want to share this story, but I think I'll save it for.
You want to save it? Great.
Yeah, because
save it.
It's worth. So come back.
I agree. Yeah.
We'll do it next week or the following week. It's this. We'll do the story of a conversation I had with a billionaire that really resonated with me and a lot of other people. I posted it on my X feed this weekend, and there's a lot of nuance to it that we can break down. I think it would be worthwhile. Yeah. But thanks for sharing that. I thought it was fascinating. Great story.
It's fascinating. Yeah, really. Like I said, I thought it was going to be a gig gab thing, and then I got 30 minutes in. It was like, oh man, what a business! Holy crap! Yeah.
Own your content. Yep.
Own your content. Absolutely. Thanks for hanging out with us, folks. Feedback at businessbrain.show, where we own all of our content, but you own. All you do is give us a non-exclusive right to your emails to share them in the show. They remain yours. There it is. We'll see you on Friday.